It is the fifth and final model introduced in the 2025 Gear Fighter Dendoh Collaboration, with a brand new look to celebrate the series' 25th anniversary and the power of the Burning Dragon. This is GFD04 Neo Drago Ogre, with a completely new kit of Shutdown shot, double fire, slow hammer, float legs, and the leg ability of Combustion, which upon receiving a fire damage over time effect to self will restore the HP lost from the damage over time effect and buff all leg stats in trade minus armor and heavy limit. Now, obviously, the Gear Fighter Dendoh Collaboration saved the best for last with Unicorn Dendoh and Neo Drago Ogre, with a lot of extraordinarily powerful skills and new skills on top of that to really change up the game as far as raw power and defense ignoring power, as well as high impact on ailment DPS on top of that. Drago Ogre basically picks up where regular Gear Ogre left off with a very heavy ailment-based DPS build, but with a much more potent set at his disposal that makes him an extremely powerful nuisance the longer he's allowed to stay on the field. Shutdown shot on the head part is a brand new skill that serves a couple of very unique conditions and a brand new negative ailment on top of that. Upon breaking parts with Shutdown shot, it applies a new ailment effect called Shutdown to the enemy in question. This effect debuffs all part stats of the target except armor by 30% for 3 actions. This means that while applied to this, if it does successfully break apart, the enemy in question for their next 3 actions will be notably slower, notably less likely to land hits or crits, and notably less powerful, which makes it a whole lot easier to tank blows, especially if your tank is really starting to struggle and needs a chance to breathe. The only drawback to Shutdown shot is the fact that it now has a 3-turn cooldown before you can use it again. So unlike, say, Curse shot, which requires or even Burn Blast, which has a 1-turn cooldown, Shutdown shot is basically something that you're going to be starting the fight with on turn 1, and essentially kind of fire it off whenever you get the chance. But given you only have 2 uses, you may want to be a little careful on how you choose to use those. Double fire on the right arm is another new skill, which kind of serves in the same vein as we saw with Last Queen serving with double melt. So simply explained, double fire will inflict 2 stacks of fire on the target and 1 on self. Essentially, this is the melee version of a double fire shot that was introduced with Destro Ender in the Godzilla collaboration. So not really anything to pay attention too much to there, but having to inflict 2 stacks of fire on the target actually fixes one of the biggest problems with DOT type damage, and it's the fact that it doesn't really do a lot. But given that both of these stacks of fire at the same time stack on top of each other, it is now extremely more potent and makes it a whole lot easier to break things down and melt armor, and make it a lot easier to take enemies out sooner than later. Of course, at the cost, you do also have to set yourself on fire to do so. Slow hammer on the left arm is the last brand new skill, but introduces another brand new ailment in the game. Slow hammer is an AoE type of attack, meaning it will damage all parts of the target and spread the damage, of course, to all active parts on the target, but it will also inflict a brand new ailment called Slow. This new ailment debuffs heating and cooling of the target by a staggering 50% while it remains active. So much like Shutdown shot is extremely dangerous and potent for what it brings to the table, Slow hammer really is just as nasty, because slowing down an enemy's heating and cooling means that you're going to be able to have a much easier time outrunning them than you were before, because they're not going to be going nearly as fast. And on top of that, Slow hammer also ignores defense when attacking, so it's already going to be extremely painful when you go to actually whack them with this particular move. Float legs means that Neo Drago Ogre will have a very solid A rank across all terrains across the board, which means you can use him very reliably anywhere without having to worry too much on terrain compatibility. And his leg stats are actually also fairly solid as well. With a base mobility of 896, he's off to a good start in the speed department. An evade of 1041 is also not too shabby. He can dodge your grades as he needs to, barring he is not slapped with a no dodge penalty on a cooldown or through some ailment. A melee resist of 1644 and a shoot resist of 1349 are both very good numbers though, as this means he can definitely hold his own when taking licks up close and personal or from afar without anything taking him down too quickly. In the armor department, he's also packing some good armor there as well, with a head armor of just under 5100, arms at just under 4500 apiece, and legs also at just under 5100, which means Neo Drago Ogre is bulky, and he's also very tanky, which means he's going to be sticking around for quite some time if you don't take him out quickly. On top of that, Combustion also is really nice as it ties into his skill with double fire, so his stats are actually going to go up where he'll get faster, dodgier, and more resistant to damage for every stack Combustion triggers. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I very easily have to rate Neo Drago Ogre a very solid 7.5 out of 10. Compared to the original Gear Ogre, which again was a very heavy ailment DPS type, Drago Ogre is pretty much in the same vein, but more on the aggressive side than anything else. And it's also interestingly synergetic. Being able to use double fire and inflict a stack on self allows it to proc Combustion, which means not only are you getting the HP back you lose from the damage over time effect, but you're also getting an all leg stats plus bonus every time it does for the first 5 stacks. So that honestly makes it extremely synergetic to be able to fire a whole bunch of things off quickly. And between Shutdown Shot and Slow Hammer, you can really mess with the enemies in question between their speed and their overall stats between both of those attacks in question. The only real weaknesses is the fact that he is triple heavy, so anyone that is bringing a gravity attribute skill, just be a little wary of if you're choosing to use. And given that he is extremely heavy on the ailment emphasis, means anyone with stat cleanse can basically curb him to a degree. But he is still fairly aggressive in the base damage either, so if he can't get you with ailments, he is gonna get you with the base damage. As mixed parts though, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at an 8 out of 10 for these same reasons. While you can use Shutdown Shot, Double Fire, or Slow Hammer just about anywhere, it is kind of part and parcel that if you are going to use anything, it is going to be extremely heavily reliant that you use Double Fire and Combustion together or in some kind of combination. Or even use his legs with something like Flame or Meteor or something that afflicts a damage over time effect of the fire type to self, so you can proc that leg stats plus. And then everything else is just icing on the cake with the raw damage and the new ailments that Drago Ogre is bringing to the game with slowing enemies to a crawl, both stat-wise and speed-wise.